Okay, so what we're doing here, I'm using a G&W notch straight edge for a 34-inch scale on my Steinberger XT25. And what you want to do is to make certain there's no light coming through on the flats. Like clearly there'll be light coming through the notches. This one cost a little bit more. It was the one that is a dual short and long scale one, and it's been machined for extra flatness. So I'm quite happy to pay that because I have two bases of that scale. I've stripped all the pickups out. I'm going to look at refitting them, and the tools you need is an Allen key to get the neck straight, some sort of notch straight edge. I know people say you can use like a ruler like this and cut it out. Maybe. I'm not totally convinced that this is machined anywhere near as flat as this, and with a feeler gauge on 0.015 of an inch you can notice a difference. So I think get the right tool for the job. Flatten it out, use a fret rocker like this to check the high and the low flats, and now we should be, you can see it doesn't move at all. We're flat because I flattened them out. And you can see plenty of videos on that from Dave, and Sam Meeks is another guy that really does this. I bought this tool, I think it's from Crimson, I might be wrong, but it's a shape tool and it has a diamond file just for this style of jumbo frets. So it was a reasonable investment. It made the job pretty quick. I'm really not too bothered about keeping the fingerboard in touch. This is a play base. I take it for traveling, so it's going to get abused. And the other thing I found useful were these sorts of radius gauges, and it is a 14-inch gauge, so it is a 14-inch radius. And then also from G&W in Portugal, a 14-inch sanding block, and you put a couple of grits. I used in the case 600 and 1200 because I wasn't taking much metal off. And when I went through the process, I found that these two here were high, and that was causing problems across the whole of the base. If you want a low action, for a reasonable action, it was good, but I wanted to take it a little bit lower. So I've just finished that off. I'm going to restring it soon, but before I do that, I'm taking a look at the pickups, because these are the sort of Steinberger copies of the Selects, EMG Selects, and it's got two sort of versions here, a neck and a bridge. Together they come out about 5 kilo ohms resistance. On their own are about 9, and I'm really not impressed with the output. I think it's a bit low. So what I'm thinking of doing is to route for a new pickup. There's various options, but I figure that having a wider hole to accommodate more pickups gives you more choice and then cheaper value, because the EMGs active are very good from what I'm told, but they're quite expensive, and I'm not so much a cheapskate, but I just want the experience of actually taking the time to try and modify it. And the worst case is I ruin it a bit. It's not the end of the world. So that's what I'm trying to do. If you walk over here in my lovely tidy bench, here's a set of fairly cheap pickups. These are measuring 13 and 12 respectively, so they're quite a bit more output. So what I'm doing here is just making a jig to get the size. So they're 102 by 38, and that seems to be a standard, a 4-inch standard. So I guess when you look at your humbuckers, you get these 3.5s, EMG 35, which is 3.5 inch, and 4.0 is the 4.0 inch. So what I'm figuring is that I'll make this up. I'll put a couple more bits around this edge to make it more rigid, and then I'll consider routing out the body. I have a router under the desk somewhere. I'll make my mind up. I might bottle it. In the meantime, as I say, I did also come back over here. This also try one of these rather cheap bell cap free band equalizer type things. So you have to be slightly careful how you wire it into the stereo jack so that you don't, so the battery works. If you look here, I almost took my thumb out here. The scalpel got stuck in it, trying to reverse engineer this thing, taking it apart, and it's just a generic circuit board, and you get a little bit of bass, very little mid or treble. I didn't put it on a spectrum analyzer, I put it on a scope, and I really couldn't notice any goddamn difference in it. And as you can see, the components are really quite cheap, and they're linear as well. And I think normally one might expect to have audio pots for the volumes, and then a linear for the tone, maybe, or maybe audio altogether. And what these things consist of is some sort of MN pickup here, and what you do is you put one pickup on the top and one on the bottom, and it blends. But it's a really cheap pot. And then what I did for experimentation, I put these two off because it was only the bass pickup and the volume pot rather to make any difference. And yeah, it made a little bit of a difference, but not enough. So what I'm thinking is that the passive pickups I've got are much more output than these, so I'll give them a go. And to test them, I put those other pickups upside down and put them on top of the strings temporarily, just to see if I could get some sound out of them, and it was quite bassy. So that's where I'm at the minute, and I'll make a decision whether I cut this thing up or not. But okay, thanks.